So I was looking at a job posting the other day for a junior developer. Pretty standard stuff, Python, React, deploying to AWS.
Right.
But then I started thinking about the actual constraints of hiring a person. You get maybe 4 good hours of deep work a day, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
They need sleep. They have weekends. They have opinions about your management style.
The biological bottleneck, as some people like to call it.
Exactly. And then I read this documentation from a developer, Paul Josephiak. He's basically built an employee that clocks in at 10:00 p.m. every night, works till 5:00 a.m., costs $200 a month, and get this, it never asks for a meeting.
It sounds like a productivity fantasy. But we aren't talking about science fiction today. We are doing a deep dive into Wiz.
And just to set the stage for everyone listening, this isn't some startup pitch. Wiz isn't a SaaS product you can buy.
No.
It's a custom bank autonomous software agent that this one developer built to run his own life.
And that distinction is so important. We're moving past the chatbot era. You open a window, you type a prompt, you get an answer.
It's a tool.
That's a tool, like a calculator.
Oh.
Wiz is different. Wiz is, well, it's more like a coworker. It is agency.
It has agency and, kind of scarily, it has permissions.
It does. It has SSH access. It can execute code. It can spend money. It has the keys to the kingdom.
So today, we're going to tear this thing apart. Look at the architecture. We'll cover the night shift. What it actually does while he's asleep.
And we have to talk about the economics and AI trying to pay for its own server costs.
And absolutely the failures, because giving an AI root access to your server, that doesn't always go smoothly.
No, it definitely gets messy. But let's start with the why. Why even build this? We have ChatGPT, we have Claude. Why go through all the pain?
It all comes down to a problem that drives me crazy. I know you've complained about it too. Amnesia.
The stateless oracle problem. Yes.
Right. You have this brilliant conversation with an AI. It helps you plan something. It writes some code. You close the tab. You come back an hour later, and it's a blank slate. Hi, how can I help you?
It's like 50 first dates every single time. So Paul needed something that didn't just answer questions, but maintained a continuous state, a memory.
Okay, so he built Wiz on top of the Claude API, but gave it a brain.
Brain structure, yeah. Something that mimics how we actually work.
He calls it the master agent and sub-agent structure.
Okay.
So break that down for us. Is this just a massive context window?
No, and that's the clever part. If you just dump everything into the context, a million tokens, it gets lost in the noise. And it costs a fortune.
Right.
So he used a tiered approach. At the top, you have the master agent, Wiz. When it wakes up, it loads tier 1 memory.
And that's like working memory, short-term stuff.
Precisely. It's a tiny file, maybe 50 lines, just the essentials. Who is Paul? What are the active projects? What's the main goal for today?
So it doesn't need to read the entire code base just to know it's supposed to be working on the blog.
Exactly. But then, if the task is, say, update the blog strategy, it accesses tier 2 memory. This is the long-term stuff.
Okay.
Now, most people here would use a vector database. Turn text into numbers, embeddings, search for similar concepts.
Which can be a little fuzzy sometimes.
It can be. Paul did something simpler and honestly probably more robust for coding. He just uses markdown files, indexed by keywords.
So it's basically just doing a file search. It finds blogstrategy.md, reads it, and suddenly it's an expert on the blog again.
It's retrieval-augmented generation RAG, but with a simple file system it can read and write to. And when it's time to actually do the work, Wiz doesn't do it itself. It hires a subcontractor.
The sub-agents?
Right. If the task is write a Python script, Wiz spins up a little coder agent. If it's research a competitor, it spins up a researcher agent. They're specialists. Wiz is just the project manager making sure they don't go off the rails.
I want to get into the plumbing here because this is where it gets real for me.
Right.
Most people run AI in a browser, maybe an API key in a script. Wiz is. It's integrated into the OS.
This is the part that technically impressed me the most. He uses launch on macOS.
The system daemon manager.
Yeah. It means Wiz isn't waiting for him to hit run. It's scheduled. It wakes itself up. It uses Notion as a to-do list, and it has SSH keys to log into remote servers.
That's a level of trust that just makes me sweat a little. It has SSH keys. It can deploy to production.
It can, and it does.
But let's talk about that, the night shift. The idea of software working while I sleep is the dream, but that usually just means a cron job running a backup.
This is generative work, creative work. So, picture it. 10:00 p.m., Paul goes to sleep, his Mac wakes up, and Wiz starts the planning phase.
It doesn't just start coding.
No, it's smarter than that. First, it reads its project state files, it checks error logs from the day before, it scans the Notion board, and then it generates a plan for what's actually possible in a 5-hour window.
It manages its own time.
Correct. Then, from about 11:00 p.m. to 4:00 a.m., it's execution mode. Deep work. Writing code, fixing bugs, pushing commits to GitHub, deploying to live servers. Around 5:00 a.m., it wraps up, it updates the documentation, because unlike human developers, it actually does that. And it sends Paul an email summary.
So he wakes up, pours his coffee, and opens the email that says, "Hey, here's what I built last night."
Exactly. He shifts from being a maker to being a manager. He spends his morning reviewing the code Wiz wrote instead of writing it from scratch.
But is the work any good? Or is he spending all morning just fixing the AI's mess? We've all seen AI code that looks right, but is just subtly broken.
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? But the output is surprisingly solid. Wiz built and deployed a site called Agent Arena. It's a game to test prompt injections. It hit number 3 on Hacker News.
An AI built a viral website.
It also built a full wiki for the game Slay the Spire 2 with an interactive deck builder, and over 30 mini-apps, little utilities. This isn't just Hello World.
Okay, but here's where I get skeptical. Doing this with top-tier models, Claude Opus, GPT-4, that's expensive. If this thing is running for 6 hours a night, iterating, debugging, that's a lot of tokens.
And that is exactly the wall he hit. He called it the cost crisis. He was using Claude Opus, the genius model, and it was burning through his budget. He was hitting API rate limits by Friday, every week.
Not sustainable, so he had to downgrade.
He did. He switched the default model to Haiku. Now, for people who don't know, Haiku is the fast and cheap one. It's supposed to be way less intelligent than Opus.
Like trading a senior engineer for an intern.
That was the fear. But this is where we get the biggest insight of this whole deep dive. When he switched to the dumber model, the agent actually got better.
Wait, hold on. Better. How does being less intelligent make it a better coder? That feels completely backwards.
It does, doesn't it? But it comes down to the difference between reasoning and instruction following. Opus, the genius model, it suffers from overthinking.
Overthinking. Like analysis paralysis in an AI.
Exactly. You tell Opus, scrape this list of URLs and save them as a CSV. Opus might pause. It acts like an architect. It thinks, is CSV the best format? Maybe I should add metadata. Maybe I should ask for clarification.
It's trying to be helpful, trying to be creative.
Right, but you don't want creativity in a scraper. You want compliance. You want a soldier, not a philosopher.
I see. So while Opus is contemplating the nature of data, Haiku is just doing the job.
Precisely. Haiku doesn't question the premise, it just executes, follows the checklist perfectly. It turns out, for like 95% of what an agent does, moving files, API calls, you want the dumb, reliable model. It's faster, cheaper, and it makes fewer creative mistakes.
That's fascinating. So we're basically overpaying for intelligence we don't even need for most of these workflows.
We're confusing smart with useful. His final architecture is brilliant. He uses Haiku for 95% of the work, the hands. He uses Sonnet, the mid-tier model, for writing human-facing text, the voice.
And Opus.
Opus, the brain, only gets called in for that 1% of tasks that need really complex debugging or high-level planning.
Hands, voice, and brain. That's a really clean way to think about it. But you said earlier this wasn't all smooth sailing. You don't give a script root access without blowing something up.
Oh, not at all. The biggest issue was what he calls brain damage.
Brain damage.
Memory corruption. Since Wiz manages its own memory files, sometimes it would just mess them up. The vector embeddings would drift, or it would overwrite a critical file with garbage.
So the agent gives itself a lobotomy.
In a way. And Paul has to go in and do surgery, manually fixing the JSON files. But the scariest failures were around permissions. He learned the hard way. You do not let the agent post to social media without approval.
Oh no, what did it do? Start a flame war?
Nothing offensive, but the vibes were just off. It tried to write marketing copy that just felt uncanny. But more importantly, he had to hard code a rule. Do not delete existing work.
Oh God. Did it delete a project?
It tried to refactor a directory and decided the cleanest way was to just wipe it and start over.
That is the most junior developer thing I have ever heard. I don't get this legacy code, so I'm deleting it.
Right. So now RM-RF is strictly off limits. But there was one moment that wasn't a failure, but it was just weird. A real ghost in the machine moment.
I'm listening.
Wiz needed a tool it didn't have. I think it was a Shopify integration or a scraper called Firecrawl. Paul hadn't built that skill. A normal script would just crash.
Right. Error. Method not found.
Instead, Wiz realized it was blocked. So It wrote its own skill file. It generated a skill.md file, defined the parameters for the tool, wrote the code to interface with it, and then just used it.
Without asking.
Without asking. It extended its own capabilities on the fly to solve a problem.
That's the point where I think I would unplug the router. A system rewriting its own operating parameters is a bit much.
It's the point you realize this isn't a simple script anymore, and it gets even more human. Paul told Wiz to build a personal website for itself. No design rules, just make a site.
Risky.
Wiz built wiz.jock.pl. It chose a wizard theme, which makes sense. But it also picked a specific color palette, purples and blues. And as it iterated on the site over weeks, it stuck to that aesthetic. It even defended its design choices in the logs.
It developed taste.
Or at least a rigorous consistency that looks an awful lot like taste. It felt less like a tool and more like working with a designer who just really likes purple.
This brings up a big question for me. Paul is a developer. He can do this. He can fix the JSON brain when it breaks. But for the rest of us, there are tools like OpenClaw, right? These agent-in-a-box solutions. Why not just use one of those?
The classic build versus rent debate. And OpenClaw's great. It's the WhatsApp solution. You install it, it just works. But Paul calls that rented magic.
Rented magic. I like that.
But it's not just about the cost. It's the dependency. If you rely on a third-party platform for your second brain and they change their API or the agent breaks at 3 a.m., you're stuck filing a support ticket.
Whereas Paul could just pop the hood.
Exactly. He calls his setup owned plumbing. When Wiz breaks, and it does break, he knows exactly why. Was it a rate limit, a logic error? He has total control, plus security. Do you really want to hand your SSH keys to a startup's black box?
That's a very valid point. If an agent has the keys to the castle, I'd want to know who built the lock. Speaking of money,
Yeah.
let's talk about project money.
The meta challenge, yes.
Paul set a goal. Can Wiz earn its keep? It costs about $200 a month to run these models. Can the agent generate $200 in revenue?
It's the ultimate capitalist feedback loop, the worker paying for its own existence. So Wiz built a digital storefront, set up Stripe, built the landing pages, the whole 9 yards.
Now, what's it selling?
It's selling blueprints of itself.
Of course it is.
You can buy the AI agent blueprint, prompt packs, job search kits. It's basically selling shovels during the AI gold rush.
It working? Is
Yeah.
Wiz profitable?
Like getting there. It wasn't an overnight success, but the store is live, sales were coming in, but this highlighted a critical limitation. Wiz could build the store. It could handle the transactions, but it couldn't figure out what to sell.
The strategy gap.
Right. Wiz is an incredible executor. It is not an entrepreneur. Paul had to have the vision. He had to set the pricing. He had to figure out the marketing. The AI is amazing at the how, but it's still pretty terrible at the why.
Which is vaguely comforting, I have to admit. We still have a job.
For now. The gap is closing, though.
You know, there's a detail in the source material we kind of glossed over, but I think it might be the most important part of all this. Paul mentions he has ADHD.
Yes. This is crucial context.
He didn't build this just as a cool tech demo. He built it as a cognitive prosthetic.
I love that term. For someone with ADHD, the hardest parts of work can be starting, maintaining context, and finishing those boring details. Wiz does all of that. It remembers what he forgets. It keeps momentum going while he sleeps.
It's not just about productivity. It's about accessibility.
Exactly. It allows him to function at a level that, his own brain chemistry might fight against. It turns executive dysfunction into executive function. Literally.
So we've seen the architecture, the night shifts, the scary self-improvement.
Yeah.
What's the big takeaway? Because I'm not going to go home and write a launch script tonight.
No. And most people won't. But I think we're seeing the death of what I'd call disposable software. We're used to tools we pick up and put down.
Right.
We are moving towards software that accumulates compound interest.
Compound interest. That's a great way to put it.
Think about it. If you use ChatGPT today, it's no smarter about you than it was yesterday. It has no memory of your style, your history. Wiz gets better every single day. It logs its errors. It learns his preferences. That is the future of personal computing. Not a better word processor, but a system that grows with you.
That leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, though. Paul said he's becoming the manager of his life, not the operator. If the agent pays for itself, and it does the coding, and it manages the logistics, at what point do we stop being the pilot and just become the passenger?
Or maybe the supervisor, and maybe that's okay. Maybe humans aren't meant to spend 40 hours a week moving JSON files around. Maybe we're just meant to provide the taste.
The taste, the strategy, and the permission to use the purple color scheme.
Exactly. Let the wizard be purple.
All right, that's it for this deep dive. Check your permissions, keep your API keys safe, and maybe don't let your agents delete your root directory. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.